Cool. So we are now recording live with Transrational National Transrational Trans Radical Rational. There you go. Hi. So I am MX Martha. As MX is the correct pronoun. And this is Trans Radical Rational, where I guess I talk about trans radical ideas, but in a rational sense, because all rationals, and sorry, not rationals, reactions. All radical reactions need to be rational, maybe. So either way, so little background myself is that what's it called? I didn't really start doing this until I got the opportunity to facilitate a TGNC group session, and this was when I was still beginning my transition, but if there was the opportunity, I was drawn to it to come in and facilitate a group that I had been attending for some time, and the hard part was sort of giving up the group for myself, because that's the way, I, was able to vent or just, forget about world issues or anything like that. But, ever since, you gotta take these opportunities whenever you can get it, you never know what carries you further, what carries you away, and what will take you to amazing places. So the amazing thing about doing this group was that it forced me to sort of learn on the fly, a lot more, forced me to read a lot more on topics, because it can't facilitate a meeting if you don't know. It forced me to look out for outside resources about, because you have to contribute resources, tell people what this stuff is, what's around there, what they're, what they can get. And so that was the key to which was good for me, because it forced me to sort of reflect on myself, get myself in order before trying to help, not even I guess help people get themselves in order, because people are going to do that anyway, but sort of guide them that in the way that, give them the tools, I guess, or just not even the tools, just the support that hey, now you can flourish, It's people, have the tools within themselves to develop, especially when it comes to transgender non-conforming methods, because this is something that, you've been either most likely if you're researching the subject, unless you're doing something scholastically or just keep information, if you're doing it for a personal sense, researching into it, normally that's because you identify it, so it's all right, bet. So once you identify, what do you do? And that's a common theme I realized, especially since facilitating these group meetings, is that, hey, a lot of people come in with the same trepidation, irregardless of how they look, how they present, what I guess, not level, but what stage they are in their own personal growth, within or outside of the whole sphere of being transgender non-conforming. A lot don't have an idea, but then they have an idea. They have actually really strong idea, because they've been holding on to these feelings for so long, and they've done their own research, and they saw what a lot of times they come in smarter individuals will come in smarter than they realize regarding gender attitudes, and it's more so just providing the opportunity to sort of vent that space, what's in their mind, and put that and hear it as a reflection that to have these conversations. So literally, that's literally probably my role is just to provide the conversation so that they can get the stuff that's in here, the stuff that's in here, the stuff that's in here, the stuff that's all inside, out into a way that they can reflect, if they're correct, if they have allies, if they want to adjust, self-adjust, or if they want to self-strengthen and become more residual in their fight. So that's just the crux of it. People have the information, but it's just being able to use it in a productive manner. So using the office space to record this, I don't know how long I'm gonna do these clips or anything like that. I think I might start off as clips because I tried to do a full piece, and as I get more confident, I'll show that piece. But as of right now, this keeps it free flowing. It gives me time to really vent, especially after doing the group. Like I said, I was going to the group, and that was a group that I used for myself personally, and then now I don't technically have a group. I can use other resources, but my schedule just doesn't allow for that. So, but it's all blessings in disguises because now I get to facilitate, come up with stuff, come up with things and ideas, and really put the things I learned from speaking it, what I just said in terms of myself, all the things that I've learned, and put it into focus, put it into practice, and put it into I don't even know what, into practice. We're social beings. We need social feedback. If we keep all our ideas, whether it's on gender identity or whatever within that whole gender. And when I spell gender, I don't know if it's gonna come out reversed. I've been having an issue with that when there's lots of other things coming out reversed. So I'm gonna try to what is it? I spell gender. I don't know. I spell gender Gyndyxr, because it's no longer this binary sense, it's all, it's different. The paradigm is shifting to where now you have these, educated transgender non-conforming individuals, coming up with new language, new terms, new ideas, as opposed to being writing our own truths, as opposed to how we used to have just cisgender hetero that, writing it, it's in the same space of, in terms of African Americans having their truths written by, race, the predominant race that's able to write in these fields, So it's just the way things go, now that there's, as, similar to how now, and it's not continuing, the fight still going on in terms of African American, value, fight for value. But I guess that would be the hope in this whole transgender non-conforming scope is that first comes civil rights, or and it's earning that right, and then utilizing, and then passing it on until eventually, we're medical, I had one point, for example, medical procedures were, written about African Americans by Caucasian, doctors. So it's not the same thing where you have very gendered, cisgendered individuals writing, medicine books, psychiatric, therapy, whatever, for transgender non-conforming individuals. So then the next step would be for trans and gender non-conforming individuals to write these texts, to study these fields, to do the medical procedures, because, for example, all right, so you have one of the something that I read that was interesting is that the idea that because now you have all these trans and gender non-conforming individuals, arising, and which is a great thing because people are starting to do what they want to do, put their own happiness in the forefront as opposed to everyone else's. which a lot of groups like marginalized groups do, which gets scary because it sort of takes away from the group mentality and focuses on the individual. But we need to strengthen the individual, and then the individuals come back to the group, ideally, because we all need to grow in our own way, and we don't need to put societal pressures to conform. That's going to be ingrained. That's something that people like to do things for the people that look like them and that reflect that accept them. If you give people respect and authenticity and agency and just, then they'll pay it back, even if they can't afford to pay it back, they'll pay it back with kindness. And that's all you need sometimes. So but that's digress. But with all for this new with trans and gender non-conforming, now you're gonna eventually have this elderly population that is trans and gender non-conforming, whether in 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, and similar to baby boomers, you're gonna have to figure out what to do. You don't want very heavily gendered, aides and nurses taking care of you if you're gender non-conforming or trans, and it's they won't provide you with that care that because if you're elderly, I'm talking from elderly homes and all that. If you're elderly and you cannot ambulate and you need help washing yourself, you want someone who understands that your physical features might not reflect your identity. So, it's key. That's that's going to be a huge, I feel, point of contention and worry in the future. So, I like to say I'm a queer square, a square, I'm a queer square, think very practical, but within the queer realm, which is hard to do, which is not really. I find that, Black Lives Matter is essentially a queer group, and they were able to organize. Trans Lives Matter, exactly the same thing. So hippies as well. So always recommend that that trans and gender non-conforming individuals get into some sort of healthcare field, or being an aide. A lot of places, a lot of the issue with currently in terms of trans and gender non-conforming folks, they're the lack of job opportunities, or so some practical, rational, reactionary. I can't remember my title. I forgot. I should probably write it down. Radical rational. So radical rational is to pick a field and enter the field with a sort of dominance that it, that field has a need, serves a need, and you're giving back, and it makes it hard for you to be kicked out and green in that field because you don't have numbers. So if you look at other, ethnicity groups who, it seems like they get filtered into a field or even choose a field that, provides community support, that provides economic support, economic stability, and their perspectives of seeing yourself represented. And so I wonder with things jobs being a developmental aide or being a nursing home aide or being these aides for these private companies or state positions or city positions or, whether working for the government or private, if that would, well, if you work government, you have the protections under, should probably have whatever the protectionary right is actually. It's very free flowing. I was gonna have music, but I don't know. I don't know how to clear music or anything like that. Protection. protection laws. Especially if your state has a gender identity or gender expression like laws, you know, I recommend that, like, in fact, that like transgender non-conforming flood like their state or their city occupations, resumes, apply regardless of your gender identity or presentation, because you want that protection.